So I'm very sorry that we have to do this, but I am going to continue where I'm left off to get this over with. So let's do so. The Imperial War continued, basically. General Alexei has managed to capture Goland and is now helping Yukarich conquer the country of Bamaya. The Grotalians, who have already prepared the defenses, called their plan the Manola Plan. Grelly and Bamayan soldiers made a position where two military buildings would be connected by a wall of sandbags, and two pieces of artillery would be set on each side of the wall, and an anti-aircraft gun, or an AA gun, would be placed on one of the buildings to shoot down any enemy planes. Alexei and Yukarich's plan is to send both of their tanks towards the wall and try to kill as many Italians as they can, and after that weaken their troops to the point of their retreat and push them towards Bamaya. The Tanaranian tanks began to move forward, destroying some of the Italian defense, along with killing a few men, and the Italians and a few Bamayans destroy their tanks in return. The troops then began to engage in combat, which killed more Italians and all of the Bamayan volunteers. The Bamayans and the Italians also killed a few Tanarian troops as well. Then both Alexei and Yukarich's forces retreat, which the Italians saw as a victory, but then Tanarian planes came and bombed their position, killing more soldiers. After the bombing, only a few men survived, and the Tyrian generals, along with the survivors, came back to finish them off. Before the final fight ensues, the general of the Italian forces, General Tony Stalino, gave his final message through the radio by saying, quote, "We were prepared for their attack, but they were prepared to face our defense. We held well, and they fought hard. We lost men, and they have lost men. But it resulted in them having more than us. In order to finally end this battle, me and my remaining troops will engage and fight till we die. This is my final message to the rest of my countrymen and friends. Don't let the Iranians take the country by surrendering to them. Just fight for the country and your country as if it was your life." End quote. After his message was sent, the two surviving units engaged in a one-on-one fight to the death. The Italian soldiers held their final stand and did their best to kill the Tyrants as much as they could. Both forces fought hard, and it resulted with General Stalino's forces being slaughtered. Generals Alexei and Yukarich, after the fight, gave their respects for Stalino, and then celebrated their victory, but they also realized that they have to continue their mission. But instead of continuing, they instead hold the defense that they captured. The total casualties that were held during the battle was 84 Tanarians, 5 Bamayan soldiers, and 89 Italian soldiers. Also, most of the casualties on the Tanarian side were tank crew members, and there was a total of 4 tanks destroyed by the defenders. Sorry guys, you hear that? That's my dog. Also, since the Italians heard Stalino's last words, they knew that he was very, very patriotic. And when Beto Kovalenko heard about his death, he sent his family a medal and a flag to give them respect for Stalino's bravery, as well as the other soldiers that fought with Stalino. The Italians and Bamayans are now strengthening their forces since the first line was captured. As for the General Shin, his forces are ready to launch the attack on Basaja's defense line. But since it was getting dark, General Shin and Colonel Zelensky told their men to rest for the night and prepare for morning to launch the attack. The person in charge of Basajan's military defense and offenses is led by Prime Minister John Charleston. Charleston put 3 generals in charge of the Winston line. By the generals' names are General Higgins, General Mackerel, and General Hawkins. Hawkins controlled the east, Mackerel is in charge of the center, and Higgins is in charge of the west. These 3 generals commanded their side of the line from the back, while the troops manned the trenches and bunkers. Also, since Winston is a huge defense line, soldiers and commanding officers could pass through to deliver supplies or reach other checkpoints if radios couldn't reach them. Also, they have a hospital in the back of the line so that the enemy won't kill the doctors and surgeons during the middle of the battle. Each side of the trenches has a team of medics to carry and transport the wounded to the hospital. Oh, I think I already said this. Yeah, I did. Trenches. I mean, surgeons. Each side of the trenches is 2 men to carry and transport the wounded to the hospital. Dawn has arrived. General Shen and Colonel Zelensky are about to make their move. General Shen's forces were sent first to destroy some of the Basaja's defenses, and their goal was to also kill as many soldiers as they can. The fight between General Shen and General Hawkins' forces lasted a few minutes, and Shen's army support was vanquished, so he was given the order to retreat. Colonel Zelensky's forces were next, and they had managed to cut through the barbed wire and entered the trenches. With some of the Basajan soldiers were killed during combat, and those who were alive were sent in the back to regroup. And as Zelensky's forces continued to move through the trenches, they have managed to wipe out the second trench. Then they tried to move towards the final trench, but before they could, Hawkins gave the order to his men to open fire as soon as the enemy comes through the entranceway to the trench. And as soon as they entered the trench, Zelensky's men tried their hardest to pierce through the third defense, but it resulted with his unit suffering heavy casualties and had to pull back. Hawkins gleefully laughed with pride as he saw Zelensky retreat. He then ordered the remaining soldiers to check for wounded men. The soldiers have managed to find only 9 men that were alive and are now being sent to General Mackel's trench for medical treatment. Hawkins suffered 38 casualties, Shen suffered 35, and Zelensky suffered 63 casualties. Since Shen's forces, excuse me, guys, I need to get a drink of water. My throat's starting to irritate me. Since Shen has suffered heavily, he was ordered to return to Morlant and prepare for defense. As for Zelensky, he was ordered to focus on Goshchia and try to weaken their defense so that they could pass through and reach Ukraine. Also, Grayton's soldiers had finally reached Kandahar and began to move their forces to Ukraine to help them set up their defenses, while Goshchia would try to hold off Zelensky's forces. The Gaussian defensive position is held in the Gosol Forest, which is where they would expect to meet the Tyranian soldiers. The Tyranians managed to break their defense, but they would have to regroup near the village of Lienz. The Gaussians, along with their allies, Golan the Face Affiliate, are going to try their best to weaken Zelensky's army as much as they can. Also, during the invasion of Basaja, the Basajan... Sorry guys, I was checking the time. The Basajan army, before the war started, have managed to upgrade their weaponry with light machine guns and grenades. Sorry guys, my ears are a little itchy. And grenades. Try again. And grenades. During the fight, they both have proved to be efficient during combat, which meant Basaja has improved their technology in warfare once again. As for Kiev of Tyrania, he was happy that his forces managed to capture Golan and hoped that his forces would continue on his invasion plan, and even though he said that he was not going to reclaim any of his lost industrial allies, he decided to reclaim them anyway because he knew that if he kept 3 nations, it wouldn't be enough for his thirst of power. So now he's focused on expanding his empire by not only having his old countries back, but all the countries that has once left him. Generals Alexei and Yukharich have received their orders to continue their advance towards Mamaia, but they won't be receiving any receiving armor support because Kiev wanted some of his armor to focus on Gostria. Eukarich wasn't a fan of Kiev's demands, but was willing to follow his orders because he knew what would happen if he refused to do so. So he and Alexei came up with a plan to use air support to bomb the city of Bucharest, since most of the Grataalian and Bamayan supplies were stored there, and once they have received word that the city has been bombed and the supplies has been destroyed, they will move in to clean up the mess. Colonel Zelensky's plan into taking Gostria is to send his army and convoy unit through the thick forest by nightfall and camp near the Gaussian defense. General Alexander orders the leader of the Phaezophilidian troops, Captain Ambrose, to send his forces at the entrance of the forest and ambush anything that spoke Tynaranian, and they went to their destination. Captain Ambrose and his men began to set up blockades and explosives on the road, and then began to hide in the tree lines and settle till they arrived. Zelensky began to move towards Gostria, but has stopped in their tracks because of the blockade. Was stopped in their tracks by the blockades. He sent some of his men to try to remove the blockades, and as they were trying to remove the blockades, the Phaezophilidian troops hiding in the bush line and the tree lines set off the explosives, killing soldiers and destroying vehicles. Destroying vehicles, but leaving a few left. And leaving a few left. Then they tried to fire their guns from the tree line, killing more of Zelensky's men, and his soldiers returned fire into the tree line. But Zelensky, in the panic, ordered his men to leave the trucks and pull out as fast as they can. The Tynaranians did manage to kill one soldier, and the Phaezophilidians killed 56 Tynaranians. The troops then took the supply trucks that were left from the explosion and brought them to their base to share. Zelensky wanted to go through Gostria again, but he needed to wait until morning and has to strengthen his unit before doing so. Morning came, and Zelensky has managed to reinforce his unit. He then begins to move into the forest in search of the Gaussian defense. He saw the enemy's defense line and began to plan out his strategy. His first plan is to send in his army to bombard the position and destroy any explosives they planted since he knew that their strategy is to use explosives first before they opened fire. Once the position is bombarded, and if any tanks are left, he would call them to retreat and send his troops to finish them off. Zelensky's armor unit managed to achieve their objectives and had been told to retreat, and now Zelensky gave the order to attack. Zelensky's men were also in a major death trap. As the men were trying to capture the first defense, General Alexander told his artillery units to open fire, and as the bombardment and gunfire continued, and resulted with Zelensky suffering heavy casualties. As Zelensky retreated his men, he ordered an air raid on the Gaussian base, which resulted with little devastation to Alexander's forces. The casualty count of the battle was 82 Tynaranians, 7 Gaulish soldiers, 2 Gaustrians, and 13 Phaezophilidians. Since Zelensky put a lot of men to death during his siege of Golf's forest, he received a call from Tsar Kiev, and he wasn't present. He wasn't pleasant or happy. Tsar Kiev was angry that he risked a lot of his army to conquer the Gaussian forest, and since he put a lot of men being killed, he was discharged from the army and was replaced by General Yuri Makarachevsky. Now with Tsar Kiev losing a lot of men, he ordered all of his comrades to hold off the whole defensive and not engage into any more offenses until the Allied forces lose a lot of men. General Alexander radioed General Kais of Grayton that their success of stopping Tynarania from entering Gostria. Kais's men were excited and bored since they were waiting for the Tynaranians to advance on Ukraine. But he also wanted to launch an offensive against the Tyranian army, but he knew if he did so, he would be in trouble for disobeying orders. So he decided to wait until his leader, Franz Steinheimer, gave him the order to advance. Since Tasmania decided not to engage any offensives during the beginning of the war, Emperor Stuki decided that now was the time to attack, and he ordered his men to prepare a fleet to attack the Tyranian ships near Kondast in the Sudos Sea. The countries Basaja, Grilli, and Grayton were thinking about doing an offensive against the Tyranians since they are holding defensive. So the leaders, King Harold, Franz Steinheimer, and Beto Kovalenko, sent telegrams to each other about the plan, and they have agreed. Steinheimer's plan is to gather his allies and surround the country of Morlant, since most of his army is there holding defensive, and the country of Goland. Basaja prefers to still be on defensive unless Grayton or Grilli needed help. Grilli and Bamaya are going to try to recapture their first defense line since it was captured. Capture the first defense since it was captured, and as for Goland and Ukraine, they both wanted to join in on the action too. The Grataalian and Bamayan army have managed to be prepared for their offensive on the Tyranian base in their country within the day, and they are now going to conduct the assault. Within the day, they are now going to conduct the assault. The Bamayan army, led by General Andor, were sent first to weaken the defenses, and they have managed to push the Tyranian soldiers back with a few men that he had remaining in total, Andor lost 85 men, and 12 of them were part of the armored division. And he lost 3 armored vehicles. As for the Tyranians defending the position, they lost about 73 men, and one of those bodies was General Yukarich. Alexei was ordered to go to the country of Morlant to set up defenses, while Yukarich stayed to defend their position. Since Bamaya was overthrown, has overthrown their invaders, along with the help of the Grataalian army from the beginning, Vlad Roshenki sent a telegram to Franz and Harold letting them know that it is now their time to end Tyranian's invasion. Franz and Harold decided that they should attack the city of Menghai, which is where Morlant and Tyrania would try their best to defend it. The Tasmanians have managed to have their fleet ready and are now being sent towards Kondast to confront the Tyranian fleet. Within a few hours, the 2 fleets met in the Sudos Sea, and a battle began to engage. After a few minutes of fighting, it resulted with the Tyranian ships suffering several damages and were called in to retreat. With the fleet now retreating, Tasmania now has an opportunity to begin to regain Kondast. The Basajans and Graytonian soldiers began their assault on the city of Menghai. Okay, guys, so I'm going to stop right here, and we're going to continue in the third and final part.